recording now. Hello, everyone. Thank you once again for another episode of the Business Breakdown with your host, Dena Davis. And today I have another special guest with me, old time friend and also partner, Mr. Mike Mazzer- Mazzola. I'm sorry, a little bit of a hiccup there. Mike Mazzola
No
from
worries.
Mazzola Tech. If you could introduce yourself, Mike, good morning.
Good morning, Dina. Thanks so much for having me on the Business Breakdown. It's great to be on the show. Thanks for the introduction. Obviously, my name's Mike Mazzola. I'm the owner of Mazzola Tech, which is an IT company here in Northeast Ohio, outside of the Cleveland area, providing comprehensive IT solutions to homes and businesses.
So that's perfect because that's our topic, right? IT consulting, IT solutions. And so as a business owner, as we think about that, that is so critical in today's world. And I'll tell a little story that Mike and I had several months ago that really inspired me to really want to have this conversation with him. But, when you think about that as a business owner, everything we do is through technology. And we really need to have a really firm understanding of how that works in relation to what it is that we're doing. And so, meaning again, you may have a lot of information that you're storing, you may have a lot of different systems that are running together. You have other people's information. So there's a lot of complex things, I think, again, when we talk about IT. But hopefully, Mike will do a good job of breaking some things down here. So, Mike, if you wouldn't mind, if from your perspective, just give us a little bit of insight into what you do, some of the areas of expertise. Because again, the reason why I gave a little bit of that preface is because IT is very broad when you just say that, or IT consulting. And we want to give people a little bit of insight into your background and the types of consulting that you do.
Yes, and fantastic introduction on the IT side. I know a lot of people, like you said, it's a very multifaceted industry. Being in IT, I mean, you've got network guys, you've got hardware people, you've got software, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. So here at Mazzola Tech, what we primarily try to assist with is the core business foundation of IT, as I like to tell business owners. So what that means from my perspective is I'm looking at things like your internet provider, your firewall, your security, remote access, your servers, whether they be internal or on the cloud, and then accessing all of this stuff through either Wi-Fi networks or a reliable wired network in an office, users' computers, and then obviously the nuts and bolts that come along with that. We do assist with backups and printers, scanners, email, spam filtering, the list goes on and on. And what I really try to do for business owners is ensure that we're making the operation as efficient and effective as possible using technology.
Absolutely. And, again, just thinking about it as a business owner, you need technology. So most times when you get started, you say, I have a computer and I have a phone, and that's all that I need, right? And you
Yeah.
quickly learn, depending on your type of business. I'm not saying that those are very critical elements, by the way. So we all need those hardware elements. But when you start to then figure out how you're going to run your business, these things morph very, very quick. And, for you, it can be easy to sign up for these things as they come up and come in, or go with this provider, do this, sign up here. So, Mike, how do we even start as business owners? Because again, a lot of times I'm sure when you get us as clients, we've already come to you. We call it technical debt, right? We've got a certain amount of technical debt that we're coming to
That's
you
a good
with.
term.
And that's that, you've got to figure out what all they have, and then how do you start to sort through it. So if just some advice for a business owner, just kind of walk us through that. Where do we start?
That's a great question, Dina. And I like the term of technical debt because that really does hit the nail on the head for a lot of my client base as far as situations that I'll find myself, with new customers. If a new business owner is really trying to establish a core foundation for their company, but, like you said, where do you start? In my experience, the best thing to do is just compare all of your options.
Hmm.
If you're in an area such as the greater Cleveland area, there's at least 4 or 5 different pretty good internet providers in addition to phone providers. So from there, you could just start at the very top with your internet. You could start to look at, the different options between, and I'm not going to name specific companies, but you could see, all right, they're providing more bandwidth, but these people provide more upload speed compared to the download speed. And then that's where I like to come as a consultant and say, well, what are you doing with the business? For example, if you're doing a lot of cloud-based activities, you're going to want to make sure you have a lot of bandwidth to ensure the upload and the download. Whereas if you have an internal infrastructure, you're not going to be relying on your external internet so much. You're going to want to make sure your internal network is as strong and robust as it needs to be. So I would say, where do you start? I would lay out all your options with your vendors in the area, whether that be for the internet or the antivirus or the computers. It's definitely very good to lay out all your options and weigh out the pros and the cons before moving forward. And that is something I like to do with business owners myself.
Well, I think there's even a step before that, Mike. It's just kind of the
Mhm.
overwhelming feeling, right? So
Oh
it's
gosh,
that
yeah.
okay, what do I need? How do I make these decisions? Everyone, even if I start to lay out the options, I may not even really know what a lot of that technical language really is. Like, I think I had to buy a monitor and it said, oh, it's LED and it's got 10.80 PSI or what. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Does it mean, is it good? That's all I want to know. Is it going to be
Right. Oh my
crisp and
goodness, yeah.
clear? So I think about it even at that level because I think that's a lot of times people they don't even know where to go and they maybe don't always know that there's someone like you or an organization like yours that can help them.
And that's a very good point, Dina, especially nowadays where technology is still such a developing industry. And sometimes I even need reminded of that myself, working in it every day. It's just so rapidly changing, even from if you look at it 10 years ago to now. I mean, we didn't have iPhones in our hands until 2007. So, you look at something like that, and then fast forward to today, here we are moving into the 12 plus generation of a device. It's really incredible. So yes, as a beginner going out to just determine what is good, what's not, I think it is very important to have a reliable resource to determine, what is the overall likelihood that this product is going to work for me as a business owner?
Mhm.
And that's a very hard question to ask. For example, like you said, something as simple as, well, is the monitor going to be clear and good? What you would always want to look at as a business owner is, what am I using it for? What is the application?
Mhm.
So sometimes, the monitor just needs to be small if we're traveling with it and it's in addition to a laptop, or if it's in a static position, okay, well, let's see, maybe you want one of the new fancy curved ones and this kind of stuff. But there's so many different options to navigate, like you said, and that's where we like to help assist and be that resource for somebody.
Absolutely. And, again, as I think about what you're saying, is that spectrum of how you help us is so wide because you have, again, we're talking about some elements related to hardware, but then I even think about, for instance, payment providers. I get hit probably, I don't know, once a day at least from a different payment provider offering to process payments for me. And so, honestly, truthfully, when I talked to and I didn't really plan on doing this, but just through another random conversation, was talking with my business banker, she tells me, oh, well, we already do that. You can get that for free. Whoa.
Wow.
Okay. So I think about that same thing when, again, as business owners, because we all know that you sign up with the general suites of email and some sort of, spreadsheet or Word document or something like that. So you have all of those types of business elements. You have it Google, Microsoft. You can pick all of that. And I think a lot of us, especially if you're starting a business, a lot of us may have come from those environments where we already use them. But
Hmm.
really, just again, just thinking through because you get a lot of, I guess, solicitation. And so, how do you start to even to bring that all
Mm,
together? Because I get the same thing. Like people will say, "Oh, this person sent me this about this recruiting." You're like, "Oh yeah, that's a sales guy." You know. So how do you help
that is a
people to
very good
sort through
question.
that? Yep.
I would say the majority of I don't want to call them telemarketers or cold callers because it really comes in a variety of different ways. As you said, for example, your bank offered a service that is something that you needed, so then in that case, that helped you.
Hmm.
But in a lot of these cases, yes, a lot of these offers are not the best decision for the business, or they might just be a solicitor just trying to get their hands into something that's already taken care of by Microsoft or Dell or the bank or whoever it might be. And in my experience, the best way to deal with that is to ask existing vendors that you already work with, similar to your banking situation that you described before. So if you already work with an internet provider and your bank and maybe an accounting software such as QuickBooks, I always recommend to keep as many places under one hood as possible.
Hmm.
So, see what your current vendors can do for you. See if they do offer these options, or if someone does reach out to you with a new service that is interested in, to your business. That's wonderful, but don't jump the gun and work with them because they're the first person that told you about it. It's always good, similar to the example I gave earlier, to explore all the options and really check to see if any of your current vendors might have those options already, because you might be surprised and they'll have them, maybe even at a better rate. And you can learn more about the service. And that just goes for anything, whether it's a cloud provided file hosting, or a payroll or something like that. I'm sure as business owners, we all know, everyone has their own payroll system, and they're all each a little bit different. So that's where absolutely comparing the options and seeing new vendors versus current, and really weighing all those out.
Absolutely. And I think about too as you were talking is again, just as you get those solicitations, reach out to existing vendors to see if they have those services. Because I think the other thing that is really valuable about that is you get the service aspect. So, a lot of times companies like when you have multiple services. Plus, here's the thing, as you know from the back end side of it, it's all designed to work and integrate, which is a huge piece of, I'm sure, what we're all trying to do as far as keeping all these systems afloat. And when you have it coming from the same provider or same or package of things, it's already done for you, meaning all the integrations and handoffs and things like that that we like to be able to automate different parts of our processes and things like that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take our first break here, and we'll be right back and we continue our conversation on IT consulting with Mike Mazzola from Mazzola Tech. All right, here we are once again for another episode of the Business Breakdown with our topic of IT consulting. And so, Mike, when we left off, we were talking about, again, just as business owners, we have all of these different things that we're trying to sort through, and technology is at the heart of it all. And again, some of the things that we do to get started or even think about your journey, because a lot of times, just being very honest, we're just kind of grabbing and doing things, or we're picking up things that we already know and we're reusing them. But we don't always understand why those combination of those systems or tools were put together in the first place, right? So if I just decide to use Microsoft because I used Microsoft in all of my jobs, of course there's no learning curve there on that side of it. But then when I am now charged with making decisions of other systems that I want to use or software, hardware, sometimes you get into things that you're a little bit beyond your expertise. So, Mike, what are some of the things that you see? What are some of the common mistakes that you see business owners take by way of approaching their IT?
That is a very good question. So I see, and I don't want to call them specifically mistakes because obviously we all make decisions thinking that they're good ideas in the beginning, and then we all either are happy with our decision, that we make, or, a little bit down the road, we determine, oh, that was a mistake, and you learn from it and obviously you move forward. Some of the biggest things that I'll see customers doing in a business format is investing in home grade hardware. And I cannot stress this enough, where some users will rather find themselves going to purchase some equipment that they may or may not know that is built for home use. And when I say home use, I meant it's built to be used a couple times a week, or when you're traveling, for personal use, Facebook, internet browsing, real basic activities. There is an entirely separate classification of hardware that is designed and built for the commercial industry. And this hardware is built to be used 5 to 6 days a week for 9 hours or more a day for 4 to 5 years. And it comes with a warranty that actually is included for free replacement on that product, no matter what happens to it. And a lot of people hear this for the first time and they go, oh my gosh, I've been purchasing my computers from, XYZ store. They don't do anything of that. And it's not really their fault because it's home grade hardware. We're not expecting to be using my home computer 9 hours a day, 5 days a week, to be getting the same wear and tear. So I would be saying that's definitely one of the largest takeaways that I've seen, because over the course of those 4 or 5 years, how much money are you spending on that hardware as far as support in IT or downtime if the user's having an issue, or them having to restart their computer or wait in the morning for it to turn on? There's a whole plethora of issues that comes along with a bad computer. And something I always like to stress to my customers is, at the end of the day, even if that costs you $50 a week or $100 a month, whatever it might be, at the end of the day, it's still costing you time and productivity that can be negated with the new hardware. And that operates really primarily on the computer standpoint, but I could tell you, Dena, I have seen everything. I have seen full-sized companies using home-grade Wi-Fi routers. And then there's some employees in the building who can't even access their internal files properly because they're offering, a home-grade Wi-Fi network, but that's all the company invested in at one point in time. That's why I like to come in proactively to a business and really look at every facet to ensure that it's operating properly, because you never know when something will be hidden underneath a rock, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? I really appreciate you bringing that up because I think that, again, is a lot of the conversation for me is very personal because, going through and restarting a business and things like that, you kind of go through these things. And like you said, I really love the fact that you were very empathetic of all of our mistakes, right? First and foremost, thank you for that because we need that
Absolutely.
support.
And that's, you have to have that in the IT industry. And I see that all too often, where I pick up a new client and they tell me that our previous IT resource was almost, condescending, or they would be upset with me, if I made a mistake or if I clicked on something incorrectly. And that sort of upsets me, because nowadays, no one knows technology like the back of their hand. We have professionals for this kinds of things. So that's why I always like to take a professional perspective from things, and just leading people along down the path that they need to go down.
Yeah, and like I said, we really appreciate that because that's really, I think, what is another value add that you bring to an engagement with a client is that peace of mind. So just really just knowing that you have someone that you can call that has expertise that you don't, that's also very critical to your business because I really don't know very many businesses that can survive without technology. I don't know. Can we think of one or two? Probably. I don't want to take our time to do that today, but we could
Very
probably think of it.
antiquated businesses.
Yeah, and there might be a few of them that can still survive, but the rest of us have to figure out how this all works to some degree. Like you said, even if it's something as simple as what we think is simple is called the iPhone, which at one point was not very simple to a lot of people. So, as you think about that, again, that whole perspective of the commercial side, again, that wasn't even something that I was even aware of, that there's another set of equipment out there. Because when you start to look for it, where do you go? Big box stores, department stores, the
Correct.
places that we know to go to get our home equipment. So, Mike, where do you go for things like that? Should you get in touch with someone like you, or is there another department within those stores we should be wanting to talk to? Or
Um, So that's really good. That's a really good question. And what I could tell you right now is that's going to depend on the size of your business as an individual. So I could tell you if your company is 5 people or less, it's probably going to be a good idea to turn to a resource like Mazzola Tech because we are a Dell HP commercial business vendor where we can distribute these products and provide you very good pricing. That being said, some of my larger clients that I work with can reach out directly to these vendors if they so wish and actually receive competitive pricing from a company like Dell or HP on this commercial grade hardware. But that being said, that would of course require the customer to develop the vendor relationship with them, getting that pricing, and knowing how to talk the terms of what you're really asking for. So what I always like to tell my customers is you're not going to walk into the big box store and find this stuff. Like you said, is there a different department? No, it really, sadly, it doesn't work like that. You might be able to find a store where you could order one of these computers, but I could tell you they're going to charge you for it. And that is where usually having a vendor for these supplies, such as an IT consultant like myself, that's where we could provide that competitive pricing on the business grade hardware, just because we do move hundreds of these units a year.
yeah, and you know what? Again, you made me think of something else too, is again the pricing, the relationship with the vendor, the service. I mean, those are all things that don't come when we get it direct from some of those
You
stores,
got it.
or you get a level of it that's not what you need. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, thinking about that again, as we're going down that path, selecting the hardware. Now, what if you already have hardware? And you've already gone through that investment? Is there a certain point in time where you should think about upgrading or bringing on new capacity if you've already bought the home computer thing to run off for my business?
Hmm. So, and that's a really good question as well, to bring up as far as, well, when does this equipment need attention? Because that's also a very hard point to say, well, if I bought a computer just a year or two ago, that's still decent hardware. Of course, you still have an investment in that. And that's where I always try to work with the customers on an individual basis to say, does this equipment still have a warranty? If so, can we add on to the warranty, or is there an additional warranty that we could purchase through the vendor? That would allow us to get at least a little bit more options as far as choices on the hardware to move forward with it or to, abandon it and maybe recoup some funds out of that. That being said, I do have some customers that approach things very proactively, where we will generate a inventory list for them to say, here's your 20 computers that you have in-house, and we'll come up with what I like to call a PC replacement plan. And it's pretty self-explanatory that, once these group of 5 computers, they come up for their warranty expiration, that's when we proactively can replace them. And it really seems to improve employee morale in the customers where I see them doing this, proactively replacing the computers on a 3-year, 5-year, 7-year replacement plan. You do find that the employees really appreciate that because they find that their day-to-day operations move a lot smoother. As opposed to the companies that are on a break fix mentality where it's, well, we'll use it until it goes, right? Which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You're getting your full investment out of the piece of hardware. But the caveat is, of course, how much extra productivity are you losing in those final years of that hardware? And that's what I like to try to help pinpoint with my customers.
Absolutely. And I think, again, just another thing that you just mentioned is productivity loss. So sometimes even as small business owners, or just I guess any size wouldn't matter. Sometimes we lose focus of efficiencies. Okay, and I mean that because, like you said, we're a lot of times we're responding to the needs of the day, or there are things that are we're preparing for in the future. And a lot of times, as we're going through that, we're doing what we know, we're keeping it afloat, but we're not always thinking in that proactive term. So, kind of keeping that at the forefront of your mind, I think, is very important because the cost of being down of your computer is huge. And that's actually, that happened to me several months ago. That was again the story that I was said I would bring up, right? So the story behind that is my email just went completely wacky. I won't go into all the tech stuff behind it because I don't want to like lose people on some of that. And then I'm also at a limitation of what I can explain depth wise of really what happened. So we won't get into the complexities of that. But just sharing that story, because that's again another reason why I always valued having a relationship with someone like Mike who has that expertise and who's also a great guy to work with. But it was helpful because again, I was down, I think what we were down, what, maybe 2 or 3 days of just kind of back and forth with the other vendor or something like that, Mike.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And I think about that.
And
I had no idea what questions to ask, what was going on. I mean, again, and I think I'm probably more tech savvy than the average person on a lot of things. Because I'm a gadget girl. I like software. I get really into it as much as a user can. I'm not a developer or anything like that. So again, I know my depth and my limits. But that was really scary for me because I'm sitting there thinking like, oh wow, like I'm going to be out of business. Like, I can't communicate with my customers. I can't receive information back and forth. I mean, that was going to be a pretty big hindrance to my business. And, just kind of going through that was a really big eye opener to me about, again, the importance of having someone that you can call that has the expertise that can help you out. So, Mike, before we get into a little bit more about that, we're going to take another break here and we'll continue this conversation. I appreciate the direction that we're going and appreciate learning more from you here in just a few. So, we'll take a break and we'll be right. All right, we're back once again for another episode of the Business Breakdown with your host, Dena Davis from Davis Hill LLC, with my guest, Mike Mazzola from Mazzola Tech, on our topic of IT consulting. So, Mike, we were talking a little bit of just again, kind of giving everyone the story that I promised I'd share, but just kind of picking that back up. That was a lot for me to try to take in as a business owner. And again, being able to call someone like you to be able to help me out was just invaluable. So, maybe if you want to talk a little bit about that, like you said, I don't know if that's a break fix mentality or if it's kind of a, oh my God, I didn't know I needed you like that mentality.
yes, and I do see so many different situations, really from both. Um, there's no lack for either of them. We get plenty of break fix work from existing clients of items that do come up that need attention on a day-to-day basis or week to week. We also do see plenty of work that is being proactively done where people do say, yeah, we want to make sure we minimize any type of outages. As you said, your email, your communication is critical for your business. And with something like that being down, it is just absolutely catastrophic to a company. And that is where we do like to ensure that we're taking a proactive approach to cover our bases and, dot our lowercase j's, as I like to say, to make sure that, none of these possible red flags are being raised, and we want to negate any risk there. And that's what we do really look for. And that's going to vary on what type of business you are. If you're working from home nowadays and most of your work is being done from home, your home internet connection, your remote access, and your email is probably the critical portions of your business. Whereas the manufacturing folks that, have been back to work and in a safe COVID environment are now still continuing to invest in their internal infrastructure. And some of them are actually gearing up to make sure that they could continue to add on. I have one customer right now that's on a pretty aggressive investment path, that they're actually looking to double the size of their company in the next 4 years. And one of the first things that they did was we had a meeting to discuss, well, what's going to be needed on the back end from the servers, the internet, the infrastructure to ensure that we could pick up the customers without having to worry about taking our systems down. So it really does get pretty big when you start looking at the larger customers.
Yeah, and I think about that too, because sometimes large means number of employees, sometimes that means volume, I would think,
Yep.
from your perspective. So, you could have 5 employees, but if you're, I guess, running an e-trading business, right? That would be
Hmm.
pretty heavy on your technology, right?
Absolutely. And you see that a lot with the graphic design people. You
Hmm.
see it a lot with, a lot of the emerging industries in medical and places like that, where they're doing a lot of R&D projects and things of that nature. So yeah, it is definitely very volume based. It's not employee oriented anymore. You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, and I think that, again, just that whole fact about being proactive, and I think about your conversation about the back end, because a lot of us don't know that there is a back end, right? Or we don't, it's this mythical place like the
Yes,
cloud. It's like, whoa, what is this
right.
back end? So, like, can you maybe break that down a little bit for us when you say that? Because when I think about it, I have an idea of what I would interpret, but how would you describe that to a customer?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I will find myself using terms like the back end, and I always like to tell my clients that I work with, if at any point I'm speaking Mandarin, please let me know. So when I say the back end, what I mean by that is I'm talking about the core foundation of IT technology that is making your business run. So whether that is a simple internet connection and a laptop, or it's a combination of multiple internet connections and maybe some remote access. Other people, I find more often it's very multifaceted. And what I mean by that is we'll have a dozen computers connecting to places like Dropbox, OneDrive, also working on other files, either locally on your computer itself or on other cloud systems. And then the Wi-Fi that's supporting this, the network. And then, of course, it's got to all get backed up, and it needs to stay secure. All of these things that are happening behind the scenes, right, to make sure that all of this is up and working is what I like to refer to as the back end. And that's why we like to take that proactive approach to make sure whatever these pieces of hardware or software are that's running the back end is running to its full potential.
Right, absolutely. And one of the things I think that's so important about the work that you do is I think of it in terms of capacity building. Because as a business owner, you want to grow. At least most of us do. Some people want to slow their
Yes,
growth, that everyone's in a different place. But as you're growing, your business has to adapt. And sometimes the growth can outpace your technology, or sometimes it hinders your growth. And so, again, I think about what you do, again, is so important because you're helping us to build the right capacity for what we do. And I think that's maybe sometimes we don't think about it that way because of it's a very now thing, or like you said, most of us are kind of in the break fix mode. So you're usually kind of calling because your hair's on fire, like mine was.
sure.
But aside from that, I mean, it's really helping businesses to be able to grow and to be able, like you said, to bring on more customers, bring on new employees, do R&D remote work development, have remote development teams be truly able to collaborate. Like this is amazing, the types of things that it can bring to your business.
Absolutely. And that is, I have to say, Dina, that's really one of my favorite parts about doing this is genuinely helping people achieve their goals and maximize their productivity and efficiency as a company as a whole. really. And it just puts a smile on my face. And I really like getting to the end of projects with customers when everything is rolled out, everything is finished, and I could hear the smile through the phone because, like you said, as a business owner, now they could think to themselves, wow, we're ready to grow. We're ready to take on more, which is definitely the goal for the majority of us. And that always makes me happy. That's one of my favorite parts about doing this.
Yeah, and I think about that bottleneck because I think of it even similar with the type of work that I do because, a lot of times they're calling me in a similar mode. I like that. I'm gonna use break fix. I'm gonna use the IT term for people now because that's really where a lot of times, yeah, people think they need to call HR is when something happens or there's a problem. And that's oftentimes, not saying that that's the worst time, but it is because no one wants to deal with those kinds of problems fundamentally. It brings down your morale. Everybody's kind of like, doesn't really want to talk about certain types of things. So we can prevent and avoid a lot of even employee types of things. And I always love the intersection between HR and IT because again, your work part of the business touches every part of the business, just like mine does. And so there's really not a time or a place or a reason that someone would not have to interact with you, if that makes sense. And so with that, you
Yes.
get that landscape of being able to see things from a more holistic perspective. And like you said, you can prevent a lot of the types of issues or concerns that people may have. And for me, on the employee side, technology is huge. It's a big, sometimes it's a derailer on morale because we're throwing new technology at them and they don't like change. And then, you have turnover or complaints or even illness. A lot of times when people don't like changes in the workplace, which most of them are fueled by technology today, they get,
Hmm.
stressed or other types of things sometimes, come back up. You also have retention. We may lose good people because of technology. And when we're recruiting people, no, like you said, no one wants to work on outdated equipment, not just because it's slick and fancy, but it's more effective in you doing your job. So, Mike, what are some ways that you help business owners to see some of that value of doing things more proactively?
Very well said, Dina. Some of the things that I like to do for my customers that want to take a very proactive approach to things, for example, opposed to the break fix that we were talking about, is I always like to implement monitoring programs. And what this genuinely does for a customer is it will make sure that you are achieving the 99 to 100% uptime that we're all striving for. And what I mean by that is Mazzola Tech can provide a monitor that would check your internet connection, your firewalls, your remote access, even things like your servers, updates, and even down to the nitty gritty level of individual computers can be available for monitoring. And what this would do is it allows Mazzola Tech to have some insight into your system that allows us to see any issues before or immediately as they arise. So no longer is there a need now for an individual to say on a Friday afternoon, well, I don't want to deal with this now. I'll call IT on Monday. IT would be reaching out to that employee to say, we found that your computer had an issue this morning or requires this update. Let's get it taken care of. So then you now have a IT department that is working almost in the complete opposite of break fix, where it's preventing the fix before it even breaks. And that's a really beautiful thing that we're starting to do for some of the customers that want to take that proactive standpoint, is the extra monitoring where it's needed. We also do a lot of backups. I do like to include backups as proactive, and a lot of people don't know this, but if you experience a security breach or a security issue in your company, God forbid, knock on wood, and there is a hack where your data is compromised, backups actually become one of the most important facets of the company. Because if today, Tuesday, you are hacked, you would want to revert back to yesterday, Monday, to ensure that all of your data can be retrieved pre-hack. And if you don't have that data or a solid backup of that, that's where it can get really messy. So I do like to make sure that some things are already taken care of like that. And for my customers that want to stay proactive, they can get an email every single morning saying you were backed up and good to go with a little green check mark. So we do take that extra mile to really fill in every gap in every facet of the company if that's something that a customer wants to do.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And I think about, again, just these times that we've been in this last year, particularly with COVID. So, business continuity planning or disaster planning, emergency planning, whatever your organization might call it, obviously everyone got thrown into that very quickly. The solution was technology for everyone. So, I think even too, just having that relationship also would make it a lot easier for people to be able to, like you said, recover data if something goes down, but you also have that proactive plan of what are you going to do if this happens, or if I'm
Correct.
not able to access these different technologies, what's my backup plan, or who's my service provider to help get that fixed? Because that's going to be huge. If you can't get in touch with people very quickly, or again, don't know how to speak the language, even if you do have a provider, they're going to ask you probably a lot of technical questions. And if you're not really in tune in how to answer that, that can grossly delay any sort of result that you might be looking for or help. They could be compromised by
And
that.
progress, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think about too of just again that whole just being aware of all parts of your business as living and breathing entities, not any one piece. Because again, I say that with HR too, is it's not any one piece of your business that you just pay attention to when there's a need to pay attention to it. I think overall, as we continue to talk and learn with our guests and learn about what they all do, everyone says the same thing is let's get in front of this so that we don't have so many disconnects or challenging issues on the back end, which for a lot of people can not only be productivity, morale, but then you have more cost. It's kind of like the whole medical analogy of keeping your health up so that you can avoid chronic disease, which is more expensive. So I think about it in that terms as well. So, Mike, we're going to take another break here in just a second, and we'll be right back with another conclusion of our business breakdown. All right, here we are once again for our conclusion of the business breakdown. This is Dena Davis, your host from Davis Hill LLC, with my guest Mike Mazzola from Mazzola Tech. And Mike, if you can, I want to really again give the listener something really juicy to take away in our last segment today. And I really love how we've talked about the commercial equipment, thinking about that being proactive versus, again, we call it the break fix mentality, understanding your back end, monitoring programs. Again, these are all things, and we'll summarize all this for future information that we can send out to anyone that's interested. But I think about all that. What would be, again, your recommendations to small business owners? What are some of the things that you feel like we could do for ourselves? Anything else that you'd like to share?
Yeah, thanks, Dina. And I definitely want to leave the listeners with something that's good food for thought moving forward. What I'll tell each and every business owner that I work with, again, is to use technology to your benefit. So, like you said, there's a lot of instances earlier where technology will sometimes upset people or force them down a path that really isn't the goal for the business. And what I would say to every business owner is before you make a technology decision, ask yourself, is this going to improve the productivity of the business as a whole? Is it going to improve the efficiency of the business? And from there, you could, when you ask yourself those questions, you might actually be able to find a better piece of technology or a different solution from the same vendor, perhaps, that provides you a better comprehensive solution. And again, like I originally said, that's what I love to do, is finding those solutions for customers. And whether that's for an immediate performance increase across the company, helping a future vision for the company on a sales growth plan, or if it's just immediate cost reduction. Obviously, like we mentioned earlier, if we have individuals that are taking a half an hour out of their day to deal with technology related issues, how much of an immediate cost reduction would your business see if those were alleviated company wide on a week to week, month to month basis? And sometimes that answer is pretty shocking for some business owners. So I would leave everybody with, just make sure that whatever you're using from a technological perspective, and as far as that goes, being internet, firewalls, remote access, your internal network being your Wi-Fi, in addition to your cloud servers and your internal servers. And again, how I mentioned earlier with backups and the importance of those and the security. And of course, email, Office 365 and all that kind of stuff. You want to make sure that you're using it to your benefit. And that's really what we try to do over here. And I do hope that if there are any business owners listening to this, that this sounds like something that they're interested in or talking more about, that's where you could reach out to us, Mazzola Tech. You can find us on Google, Mazzola Tech.
All right. So, I think about what you were just saying as well,
Oh,
because there was an episode of, I think it was Undercover Boss that was just on. Actually, I
oh,
think it was maybe about a week ago. And I happened to catch just the clips of it where the business owner, I think he was this, I'm just vaguely remembering here, but I think he was like a COO or something like that. But long story short, he was undercover working in a call center that was a customer service department for the business. And they're in the middle of working, or he's being trained, and the system just went down. And everybody, they're like, oh, okay. And I think there were maybe about 10 or 12 people there. So the system goes down. Everybody's basically frozen, obviously, because they can't do anything with the
right.
system. And the manager was just kind of like, oh, well, it's okay. This happens every day. And
Oh my
so
goodness.
this guy on the show was livid. He actually broke character. And he pulled the manager aside and was like, what is going on? And so what ended up happening was the manager felt like the customer service team was kind of like the chopped liver of the company, that the owners never really cared about them, and they had felt like they communicated these issues before, but nothing was really being done about it. But they were, and the guy asked, he said, well, how often does this happen? She's like, every day. He's like, our system goes down every single day. She's like, yes. He's like, how long does it go down each time? She's like, oh, usually anywhere from, a half hour to an hour each time.
Oh
If
my
you could
gosh.
see, and I'm sure your eyes look like mine, like, what?
Yeah.
And so
Hmm.
that right there was just, and I'll have to see if I can find that clip. Maybe we could post it up or something. People could take a look at it. But it just was so interesting to me of why they just continue to, and I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying, why do you work in an environment like that? Like why was that acceptable to have an
Hmm.
underperforming system like that? So what, from your
And that, yeah.
perspective, I can't say that you can diagnose that situation, obviously, but what are some of the things you see that people maybe don't pay as close attention to that they should?
Well, that's a great example, Dina. I could tell you right there in a nutshell what you just described there is something that I see. I don't want to say all too often because that is definitely an extreme situation of it going down on a daily basis. But I see situations like that where there is a reoccurring issue that occurs, whether it be on a weekly or a monthly or maybe even a daily basis. But individuals just feel that, oh, well, we're not important enough, or we're not getting the attention that that we think we need. So it falls on the back burner. And it's something that people just incorporate into their lives and deal with, and they tell themselves that that's okay. And that goes back to my original statement for the food for thought for any business owners that are listening. When you make these decisions for your business, for your IT infrastructure, and you put these solutions in place, ask yourself if this is the most efficient and productive solution, and is it going to continue working? And then obviously, we all don't have fine individual insight into, the nitty gritty of our day-to-day business operations, especially if you have a larger employee base, such as the story you just described. There's no way that a corporate, COO is going to be aware of something like this happening. So then, of course, he's going to break character and, come out of it, because in his mind is just adding up the thousands of dollars that this is costing the company on probably a weekly basis,
Yeah.
which that's where I would say, in a nutshell like that, or anybody else that's experiencing it, it does not hurt to just make a phone call and really determine what is the root of this issue and how can we get it solved permanently. Because all too often we see these things being patched almost as Band-Aids, right? Where we want a permanent solution. And that's really what we go for. And that's why my slogan that I conveniently came up with was one call does it all. Because I always really do like to encourage my client base to call us or email us, just reach out, because unless we have that communication, know what's going on, you do wind up with situations like that. So that's
Yeah.
what we do.
And I like that analogy too of I was there with the COO adding up the thousands of dollars that this was costing them as I'm watching this, like, oh my God, like, but I think a lot of it sometimes is again where we started from the very beginning. Who do you go to? Where do you go
Mm-hmm.
when you need help with certain parts of your business? And I think for all of us as business owners, the most important thing that I think is you got to look at your business as a business. You have responsibilities on all fronts: HR, marketing, IT, cybersecurity. You are the
Mm-hmm.
CFO. You are the accountant. You are all of those things. Now, does that mean you have to do all jobs? Absolutely not. And in most cases, people should not do jobs that they're not qualified for. But you still have to have knowledge of how things work in your company. And then a lot of what I see, honestly and truthfully, is you get people. I see a lot of people that start their businesses, they may grow very quickly, or they've grown really great organically over a few years, and now they're ready to start hiring employees. And they're like, okay, Dena, great, I'm ready to start hiring employees, but they don't have systems and processes that those employees can come into effectively. Right. So again, when we come from big companies, we're used to going in and there's some kind of onboarding or training or, hey, log into this system and do this and go here. But as a business owner, that's you that has to make those decisions. And once you've made the decisions, you have to be able to communicate that to other human beings that might work within your organization. And so I think, again, just that whole part about being proactive really resonates with me, because in that case, we can also be proactive in making sure that we have training and that we have people that understand when and how to get in touch with us when they need help, and that they're not just sitting there kind of waiting for the system to come back up. They know that there are some steps that they can take on their own, either to troubleshoot or to alert, or again, just simply knowing who to pick up the phone and call in a situation like that is invaluable. So, Mike, again, just I appreciate your time with me here on the business breakdown, and always great when we get to talk IT. Now, we're going to have to do another episode here in the future because I want to talk about gadgets. I'm a gadget girl. So,
Yes.
we'll have to talk about some emerging trends and gadgets and things like that. We'll do that on another episode. But if you can, just again, close us out with any extra advice, encouragement, anything that you'd like to share with our listeners in our last couple of minutes.
Awesome. Well, Dena, thank you so much for having me on. This has been great. I'm glad we were able to go over the different facets of my business and what we do over here at Mazzola Tech for people. And absolutely, I would love to be on the show again to talk gadgets and that kind of stuff. You put a smile on my face saying it, so I would love to organize that with you. And really just to leave the listeners with some good food for thought. Dena, I love what you just said in your previous statement. Business owners have so much on our plates, right? I'm a business owner just like those listening right now. We have to deal with all of the vendor relationships, all of the employees, the payroll, the accounting, the taxes, the marketing, the sales. And obviously, some of these things you might already have delegated out to team members or consultants. But I like to group IT right in there with that. As a business owner, you need to be growing your business and focusing on the big picture of where you see yourself 3, 5, 10 years from now. And IT is something that can help enable your future vision. But what I want to make sure is that business owners are doing it the right way, making sure that it's being done proactively and properly, while you could still get back to work and take care of what you need to take care of. Leave the IT to the professionals, because obviously if a mistake is made, that's where our previous conversation of now we have to come in on a break fix perspective. So that's what Mazzola Tech does. And if any listeners are interested, our phone number over here is 440-742-1083. And you could find us on Google and the Better Business Bureau. We got plenty of 5-star reviews. Mazzola Tech. I look forward to maybe hearing from any potential new customers.
Awesome. Well, Mike, you know that don't forget about us existing customers either. So, I hear you like hearing from
I
new
promise.
customers, but you like the existing ones better, right? No, I'm
My
just joking.
existing ones are my favorite. You got.
No pressure, no pressure. All right, Mike. Well, thank you once again. I appreciate your time and appreciate all the information that you shared. Again, IT is something near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure our listeners will take a lot of really great value from what you shared with us today. So thank you once again, and thank you all for another episode of the Business Breakdown. Have a good day.